and you see the incredibly steep part out in front of you. And when you hit the steep part, you fly over the edge. And as you're up in the air, your heart goes into free fall. And as you land back down, it lands clunk into the pit of your stomach. And then you're on this steep section, and you're too far forward and then too far back trying to recover, and this is the edge of disaster. And your ski starts slipping out from underneath you, and you suck it back in, and this isn't a graceful ski race. Boy, this is just like hang in there and go for a ride, baby. And you see the finish line, but your thigh is on fire and your leg is giving out, and you feel yourself falling down, and you fight it with everything you have, and you yell at yourself, come on! Hold on, be tough, be strong. You can do it. And suddenly, the finish line is right there in front of you. And you come through. And at that moment, as you slide to a stop and collapse from exhaustion, this sense of relief and pride comes over you. But the funny thing is that you were just a forerunner. All you did was set the track. You don't get any medals for that. Nobody comes running up to you and says, congratulations, forerunner. But that doesn't matter, because you set the track. A track that showed you winning over fear and laying it on the line for what you love and pushing back the boundaries of your possibilities. That puts you on the center podium. Excuse me. In 1988, I visited the $1 Million Roundtable meeting in Atlanta, and the theme that year was Dare to Dream. And I remember thinking so clearly that that's fine as far as it goes, but you'll never make it to any center podium, and you'll never set a track if you just dare to dream. You have to dare to take action. And 2 years ago, I finally dared to do something that I had dreamed about doing for years. I took my first solo backpacking trip and hiked alone for 5 days across 25 miles of the Utah desert. And you're probably thinking, great, that's just what I was planning to do as soon as MDRT's over. But so why? First of all, I love the wilderness. And second, people usually think that the thing I have to overcome is a missing leg. And ladies and gentlemen, that's not it. Now, the leg is there or it's not there, and mine's not there, and that's a fact, and that's okay. I deal with the facts. But the real problems, the important problems that I face, are the same problems that each of you has to face. Think about it. It's fear in the starting gate, self-doubts when you've come in dead last time after time, and that sometimes overwhelming sense of loneliness when you realize you're out on your course alone. Those are the real problems, and I think all of us at some point in our lives need to find a way to confront those things within ourselves. My journey into the desert was my path to meet myself face to face, alone. As I mentioned, it was 25 miles, 5 days, and the first 2.5 hours were easy, and then reality hit me. I hike on the crutches, and so before very long, my arms began to feel like they were going to fall off. My hands had become rubbed raw, and they were blistering, and I didn't think I could go any farther. So I began counting my steps, and that worked for a while. It kept me going, but eventually it stopped working, and I collapsed on a rock, wondering how I was ever going to make it through the rest of this trip. And while I sat there, though, I remembered my start expression. Diana, ski like a woman, tough, strong, indomitable. And those 3 words worked. They became my new cadence. And I'd go and I'd take a step and say, I'm tough. And another, I'm indomitable. I'm strong. I'm tough. I'm strong. I'm indomitable. I'm tough. I'm strong. I'm indomitable. But the funny thing was, as I said those 3 words, one of the voices inside my head was saying something different. I'd take a step and I'd say, I'm tough. And it'd say, no, you're not. You're small. And I'd go, I'm strong. Wrong. You're frail. Indomitable? Ha! Vulnerable. I'm tough, strong, indomitable, small, frail, vulnerable. And while those words were fighting it out in my head, I hiked on the 8.5 size boot, and then the tips of these 2 crutches that leave these 2 circular marks in the sand, and each is 5 centimeters wide. So, just imagine for a moment that you're out and you're hiking along the trail and you look down and you see tracks. And these are footprints in the sand like nothing you've ever seen before. Well, after several days on the trail, this group of hikers caught up with me. And when they saw me, their eyes widened and they said, oh, now we get it. We've been so baffled by the tracks you made, we couldn't figure out what kind of wild beast you were. And everyone from the group came up and they patted me on the shoulder and they told me how proud they were of me. And one man even said, woman, you must be as tough as boiled elk meat. And I think he meant that as a compliment. In response, I gave the group my very best, tough, strong, indomitable smile. And as soon as they left, I started to cry. Because I didn't feel like the woman they saw. And I was afraid. Afraid that nobody would ever really see Diana. They'd just see this spectacular superwoman, this illusion, and I was lonely because I felt invisible, fragile, frightened, unspectacular. But then one of the voices inside my head spoke up again and it said, yo, Diana, what are you, stupid? You're crying because you found out you're a plain old ordinary human? So what's the problem? That's who you are. That's who you've always been. That's okay. The next morning on the desert, when I woke up, I realized I was dirty. I mean, real dirty. 4 days of desert sand, dust, and grime. But I had 1 extra quart of water. And I heated that water up and used it to bathe. And the air was freezing cold, and the warmth of that water as it hit my shivering skin made me tingle all over. And I took this deep, deep breath, and I could smell the sagebrush all around me. And I heard the sound of these peepers echoing off of these majestic red sandstone canyon walls on either side of me. And I felt this heat, like this sudden radiating sensation in the middle of my back. And I looked over my shoulder to see what it was, and it was the sun, just rising over the rim of the canyon, its rays touching me. And I knew then that I would keep hiking on. You see, at that moment, it was like every one of my senses was completely awake, and I've never had a moment where I felt more fully alive, because I was living, chasing my dreams, and right there, I was on a center podium. It was interesting to me, when I think about it, it still surprises me that I could have such an intense reaction from this one simple quart of water. I mean, you know, what was so special about that quart of water? It was nothing. It was just plain old ordinary water. But that was what I realized out there in the desert, that there's nothing wrong with being ordinary. That none of us is just tough, strong, and indomitable, or just small, frail, and vulnerable. We're all both. We'll always be both. We're all wonderfully human. That trip into the desert was a turning point for me. And not long after that, I decided to retire from ski racing. I decided I wanted to take it easy in my old age. So I took up rock climbing. Now, a lot of times people say, why rock climbing? Well, it's fun, it's a challenge, I love it. You know what it's like? It's like this vertical chess game. As you climb, every 6 inches gives you this new move to solve. And sometimes it's taken me 2 hours to climb 70 feet. And when you think about it, that is 7 inches a minute. I mean, a baby can crawl faster. But when you're on the cliff, the focus is so intense that time disappears. I just have to tell you guys that I tried to get disability insurance recently. And my agent, he told me that when he called the home office underwriter, he said to him, I've got this woman, she skis at 60 miles an hour, rock climbs, ice climbs, has a history of cancer, goes on solo backpacking trips in the desert. What can you do for her? He said that there was laughter on the other end of the phone. I asked my agent, I said, well, did you tell him I only have one leg? And he said, no, I was saving that for the next conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes people look at me and say I'm courageous because I ski or I rock climb on one leg. But that's not it. When somebody, you, me, anybody else sets their mind on a dream and then goes out and takes whatever steps are necessary to try to make their dream a reality, to reach their own center podium, that's living. That's what it's all about. So, before I go, I'd just like to leave you with one final thought. When you're out there and you find yourself facing your next mountain, remember, it's not the dreams that you dream that count. It's the dreams you pursue. Thank you.